Hello, Paradise Panther artists. My name is Mrs. Telfer, and I'm excited to be with you today to tell you about our next master artist, Claude Monet. Monet was born almost 200 years ago in France in the year 1840. Monet learned to paint outdoors, which was not common at the time. He used dabs of pure color and painted nature as he saw it, with its changing weather and light. So let's dive in and learn more about Claude Monet and how he created a new style of art called Impressionism. Here we go, artists. Today I want you to imagine 100 years into the future. Imagine yourself learning about master artists, as you are today, and hearing your name announced as someone who changed art history forever. I bet that would really surprise you. Well, that's how surprised the artist, Claude Monet, would be if he could hear us today. He didn't have any idea that what he was trying to do would change art forever. Today, we're going to learn all about this famous man and look at some of the paintings that made him famous. We will see what he looked like, but even more importantly, we will hear how a person who really knew him described his personality. I want everyone to listen and think about how Monet felt about his work and what made him lose his temper.
I am a reporter who visited Monet at his studio. I wanted to meet this famous man, talk to him, and see him at work at his home. Three things about Monet really struck me. He was a very unusual man. His eyes had a questioning look to them, and he was a very careful dresser. He had a long, white, bushy beard and wore a battered old hat whenever he went outdoors. I also interviewed some of his friends. His friends described Monet as being even-tempered most of the time, but occasionally he lost his temper over his painting. His reasons for getting angry were always the same: a painting that failed or a change in the weather that forced him to stop painting.
From this recording, we learned that Monet didn't think he was a good artist. It is amazing to me that Monet felt insecure about his talent, and he was an extraordinary artist. He took his artwork very seriously and sometimes lost his temper over the weather or what he deemed to be a bad painting. So how did this uncertain, young, struggling artist get his start? Well, Monet and several other artists could not get anyone to exhibit their paintings. They were rejected time and time again, so they decided to hold an exhibition of their own paintings. Monet and the artists put up some posters around Paris to advertise, and a few curious people came to see their artwork. A reporter from a Paris newspaper attended and wrote a critique of their art show. Related to the word criticism, a critique is a review or discussion of something like a painting or a performance. To critique means to give your opinion. Among other negative comments, the newspaper critic said the painting showing fishing boats at dawn looked to him like a piece of wallpaper had been left out in the rain too long. This was the painting that reporter was writing about. It was titled Impression, Sunrise. The reporter picked up on that title and called these new artists the Impressionists. That name stuck, but today reviewers praise them for their genius and creativity, rather than making fun of them. This may not look like a sunrise to you because it isn't a very detailed picture. I want you to look at the color that Monet painted. Let's pretend you are a reporter who has been sent to review this painting. What would you say about it? Without using your voice, Show me your opinion by giving a thumbs up if you like it, or a thumbs down if you don't like it. Thank you. You can put your thumbs away now. You were just critics by giving a critique about the artwork. Everyone can have a different opinion about art. There are no right or wrong opinions in art. Almost no one at the time of the exhibition believed that the Impressionists were serious. The public thought their art was very strange and a ridiculous joke at best. As time went on, a few paintings sold, and a small number of reporters had the courage to support the Impressionists in public. But most reactions were negative. Using a quiet hand, raise your hand if you have seen this famous painting before. I bet many hands are going up around your classroom. Thank you. You can put your hands down now. This painting is called the Mona Lisa. Monet's painting, Impression Sunrise, looks very different from the Mona Lisa. The colors are also very different. Monet forever changed the use of color in art. In the Mona Lisa, there aren't any clear, bright colors. But Monet came along and started painting in bright, clear colors. But people were not ready to accept this new look. The Impressionists held 6 more exhibits over the next few years. Important art collectors began attending their shows, and the word gradually spread until the Impressionists became famous. Monet was considered their leader. He is given credit for being the father of Impressionism. Why did so many people make fun of Impressionism when it was new? Well, let's discover that by looking at another painting by Claude Monet. Look at this bright, colorful picture. It is also different from the Mona Lisa. It is brighter, has more color, and shows more sunlight. Color and light were the most important differences in Impressionist paintings. For 500 years, pictures were painted mostly in the colors of browns and grays. But the Impressionists never used brown or black paint. So that was a big change. The colors brown and black are not in a rainbow, and Impressionists only used the pure colors found in a rainbow. Now look carefully at the hill in the foreground. Here we see different dabs of color instead of a blended green. When Monet looked at nature, he did not see areas of carefully blended color. He saw millions of flecks of color, and that's what he painted. The Impressionists didn't mix their colors on a palette. They dabbed them next to each other right on the canvas, so it gave a spotty effect when you looked closely. Let me show you how this was done. If you take 2 colors, blue and yellow, you can make green. The Impressionists like to make green by putting separate dabs of blue and yellow very close to one another. Then the overall color that you now see is green. That's how Monet used color and how he painted all the greens in his landscapes. Let's now discover that same use of color in another Monet painting. Without using your voice, raise your hand if you can see the tiny dabs of color Monet used to create this tree. Great, thank you. You can put your hands down now. Now let's step back to look at this painting, titled Women in the Garden. You may be thinking that many different women modeled for this painting, but really there was only just one. Monet posed his wife Camille 4 different ways and in different dresses. They are dressed very fashionably for that day. I'm wondering which one is the real portrait of his wife, Camille. Let's find out. The real Mrs. Monet is the one seated in front, with her face lighted under the umbrella. Monet painted outdoors in his garden all summer on this picture, but he wasn't able to finish it before winter came. That posed a problem. The painting was originally planned to feature 3 women in the garden, but in order to finish the painting indoors, instead of adding more garden in the background, he just added another woman to fill up the space. Let's pretend again that you are a reporter for a newspaper, sent to review this painting. What kind of a review would you give this painting titled Women in the Garden? Go ahead and give a quiet thumbs up or a quiet thumbs down. Thank you. You can put your hands away now. Let's see if you agree with the real reviews Monet got all those years ago. The French newspaper reporters gave his painting a definite thumbs down. Show me silently with your face how Monet must have felt after working so long and hard on Women in the Garden. I'm sure he was definitely disappointed and upset. The last thing to note about this painting is how we do not see any black or brown. Remember what I said about the use of the colors black and brown by the Impressionists? They didn't use black or brown in their artwork, only colors of the rainbow. The Impressionists studied the color wheel very carefully and learned how colors can change each other. They knew that primary colors, the first colors, mix together to make secondary colors. Does anyone know what happens when you mix all 3 primary colors together? Using a quiet hand, raise your hand if you have an idea, and your teacher will call on you. Thank you. Yes, when we mix all 3 primary colors together, we get black or brown. They also like to use complementary colors because they look very good when used together. Complementary colors are opposite on the color wheel. Yes, they're opposites like red and green. They look good together because they are so different. The reds look redder and the greens look greener. Complementary colors make a painting look vibrant and exciting. But guess what happens when you mix red and green together, or any other complementary color pairs? You end up with a dark shadow color. The Impressionists didn't believe in using black or brown right out of the paint tube, because those 2 colors are not true colors found in a rainbow. So instead, they took 2 rainbow colors, mixed them, and got the same result. For this next painting, Monet painted haystacks. He painted them as many as 20 times. And yet, no 2 pictures are alike. The haystacks stood in a neighbor's field close to Monet's house. He painted them in summer, winter, autumn, at noon, at twilight, sometimes sparkling with water, sometimes surrounded in fog, sometimes surrounded in snow. Let's find out if painting was fun and enjoyable for Monet. Go ahead and listen carefully.
Gentlemen, I never receive visitors when I am working. Never. I am lost if I am interrupted while I am at work. You understand, gentlemen, I try to paint a patch of light. It is my fault. I want to get what I can't have. It is terrible, that light which escapes me, taking color with it. Color, any color, lasts but a second, sometimes 3 or 4 minutes, rarely as long as that. What can one paint in 3 or 4 minutes? It has gone so quickly, and then I must stop. I am feeling very low and profoundly disgusted with painting. It is nothing but constant torture.
Those are Monet's actual words. I had never stopped to consider that an artist might feel suffering or torture because he is unable to capture colors before they change. To me, these haystacks make me feel peaceful. Monet created that feeling with the colors he used. Raise your hand if you think Monet's haystacks were popular and sold quickly. Thank you. You can put your hands down now. It might surprise you. These were very popular and sold well at good prices. Look at how we can see his brushstrokes. His technique was to use many dabs, commas, and dashes of color. That's how he saw the world. He saw the world from unusual places too. Let's take a look at one of his favorite places to paint. Here you see Claude Monet and his wife Camille in his floating studio on the River Seine in France. A fellow artist friend painted this. Monet was willing to put up with a rocky boat while he painted because he wanted to catch the changing light and the colors of the water. It didn't matter to Monet because he wasn't painting detailed works like the Mona Lisa. Instead, he was dabbing on his colors in short brushstrokes, working quickly before the light and shadows changed. You probably have never seen a boat like this. That's because Monet had this boat built for painting, so it was very unique. It had a cabin large enough for him to sit inside and paint, but he could also work outside on the open deck, protected by a canvas canopy. Monet was in his floating studio, his boat, when he painted this rainbow-colored landscape. We can see another view of Monet's impressionist way of mixing color outdoors under the bright light of a sunny day. When Monet eventually became famous, he moved his family to a big house in the country, near a town called Giverny. Let's look at what colors he painted his house. I would never have guessed that Monet would have painted a pink house with green shutters. Monet loved to garden and designed all his own landscaping. When he first moved to the house, the garden was full of weeds. After a lot of hard work, Monet turned the land into a beautiful garden that he could paint over and over again. Let's imagine Monet and picture him at work. He had a long snow-white beard. He wore boots, fashionable trousers, and a fancy shirt every day. He worked outdoors under large umbrellas for protection from the sun. Today, Monet's house and gardens are kept as a museum that people can visit. The flowers that you see in this photograph are the same kinds of flowers that Monet painted when he lived there with his family. This painting on top is one of many he did of the beautiful flowers at Giverny. Monet and his wife had 8 children, and they all lived together in that lovely, colorful house with a beautiful garden and water lily pond surrounding it. Monet loved his pond and painted it over and over again. His daughters can be seen in many of Monet's garden paintings. Let's take a look at his water garden. For the last 12 years of his life, Monet seldom left his home. He was happiest painting his beautiful and ever-changing water lily pond with the graceful footbridge over and over. It looks very peaceful, and his whole family enjoyed being here with Monet. His 8 children would picnic, fish, and row their boat in this beautiful private spot. This painting of the water lilies is different from the bridge paintings because there isn't the bridge or the sky. There is only water and the water lilies. Yes, he eliminated everything but water and lilies. You've been very good art critics today. I like the way you all have your own opinion. And when you do your art activity next, you're going to get a chance to be an impressionist painter, just like Claude Monet. And I look forward to seeing you next time, Paradise Panther artists. Have a great day.